Hello everyone, it's me, MisAnthro Pony, and as I said earlier, I wanted to give my audience something to look forward to while waiting for my 2016 movie reviews to show up, and while I'm waiting for Season 7 of MLP to start. To that end, I have decided to do reviews of the new season of Samurai Jack, where I will lay out what I thought of the episode but not do a whole bunch of editing, merely showcasing images of the episode. I think this will be a lot faster than snipping scenes together, and it's a new style compared to what I usually do, so hopefully it'll be fresh for both my current audience of subscribers and regular viewers, and anyone who may be new to this channel. This episode, which has not been given a name yet, kicks things off with explosions obscuring sight of a nearby village. We see a family of aliens running away from what appears to be a new model of beetle drones when Jack shows up and starts doing what he does best, which is killing anything that is in allegiance with a coup. This first scene perfectly sets the mood of what we'll most likely be in for in this new season, as it showcases how this fifth season will be having a much more adult edge to it. I personally think that setting up Samurai Jack as an Adult Swim exclusive show was the best course of action if they wanted to give the series proper closure. For one thing, being on Adult Swim means that the show has less restrictions and is allowed to take greater risks. With more freedom at their disposal, the staff can be more creative and even lay out the story in a more interesting spirit. Secondly, considering how Cartoon Network is treating itself with its jumbled schedule of releasing new Steven Universe episodes, as well as stroking the fuck out of Teen Titans Go's ego, it probably would have been best for the show to be under the gaze of a part of the network that has shown much more respect for itself in the last few years. For one thing, they brought back Toonami. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. This first fight scene is very well paced as we get a first impression of how hopeless things seem in this time. This family thinks it's about to die, and the last supposed words between the mother and her older daughter are "I love you." But of course, hope arrives in the form of Jack riding towards the site of the attack on a motorcycle packed the fuck up with a shit ton of weapons. The way the music plays and the vibrant way the scenes are shot shows that this opening is building up to something epic. Even the way the camera slowly pans down to reveal Jack's mask sets up a sense of intimidation within the character, as well as to show him having facial protection, and it's even a cool way to build up anticipation for the reveal of his face. And it was indeed building up to something awesome, as the fight literally begins with Jack firing rocket launchers and fending off the drones with a chain gun and laser pistol alongside his motorcycle having built-in spikes, which are all used in creative ways to showcase how he can still fight without his sword. When he's knocked off of his motorcycle, he whips out this cool lance with a simplistic design, but having a good idea behind it, with one end having blades and the other having an electrical-powered pulse, which can be used to overload the systems in the drones. As he fights using the lance, we see every small detail of the destruction of the drones through their wires being twisted around, being overloaded through electrocution, dripping oil, cords hanging downward like guts and intestines, which are very clever ways for the show to get away with more detailed and intense violence because it's not actual flesh, bone, and organs. Even earlier, we see a lot more focus on small niches in how these machines are destroyed, with rust sticking out after being hit with bullets, and shreds of scrap flying around when smashed by the motorcycle. There's also great uses of the silhouettes during the fight, as it's shot through shape-shifting panels like a moving comic, and flashes of light when Jack is using firearms. All of these details make the fight seem highly cinematic, more so than most fights from earlier seasons. It's an interesting visual style that perfectly captures the more mature themes of this revival. Even the new designs of the drones feel much more menacing and gritty, emitting a more intimidating vibe during the battle against them. And the way Jack's face grows more frustrated and intense is a brilliant way to foreshadow his worn-out spirit and newfound sense of hopelessness being trapped in the future for 50 years. Before we go any further, I'd like to say that the aliens have an interesting way of communicating, not using spoken words, and instead using symbols created from their antennas to express their thoughts and emotions. If there's anything that the show has been known for, it's definitely the designs of the aliens currently inhabiting the Earth, having distinct variety and uniqueness in their biology. The following segment, which may or may not be the new opening segment for the season, and I hope it's not because it looks more like part of the prologue laying out the episode than an actual intro, has Jack explaining his hopelessness, which is understandable considering he's been stuck here for decades and all means of returning home have been destroyed. Not to mention how he's constantly coming across the brutal ways Aku's reign has destroyed the land and killed possibly millions. Not being able to escape from any of these horrible things was bound to traumatize him, as we see him resting aside a tree and looking over the sea, his posture in both shots expressing his depression over feeling like he's completely lost this fight. Even the exhale that escapes from his mouth that forms into Aku symbolizes his obsession with him and how his terrorizing of his world has left him not knowing what to do. Hence the line, "The suffering continues," as this exact detail is happening on screen. Even the way he stands in this field by himself shows that he is completely alone, with no allies to turn to, constantly having to fend for himself in this time of despair. This does lead to a really cool reveal of the show's logo, this flash of crimson red, as the letters slowly reveal themselves in a way that's like this dark gunk peeling off of the bright white coloring, flickering around as it peels like it's some kind of fire being cleared out by this shining logo. This is a great way to show that this new series is taking its presentation very seriously, having its own stylized feel to it. With that out of the way, we see a chamber where followers of Aku are seen worshipping him and participating in a pretty disturbing ritual. A single woman giving birth to 7 children, and how she will be raising them as both their mother and as a brutal general for Aku's forces. The way this chamber is shot emits a strong looming pressure with all these dark shadows and blood-red lights, expressing a feeling of intimidation as these people are all indoctrinated into serving a false god who has overwhelmed the planet. Seeing the mother giving birth and the children being laid down is haunting in all the right ways. The screams of pain as she's giving birth, and the crying of these infants, accompanied immediately by talks of how their only purpose is to be raised to kill Jack, not only shows how fucked up they are, but how strong their undying loyalty to their master is. They also have these masks used to symbolize their allegiance with Aku, having these simple but nonetheless dark and threatening designs. The way we see the mother donning her uniform and mask also has this well-directed format. We never see her face, but given the form of her body, you could still freely imagine what it would look like on your own. And I really love it when a story allows us to come up with these vast possibilities by ourselves. After that, the next scene shows that the presentation continues to impress with these wide shots of a dry desert canyon as Jack travels across it on his motorcycle. The way this canyon is displayed captivates a sense of atmosphere in a world that in some ways has been on a path of dying for a long time, and the drum bass makes the scene feel so much more intense and gigantic in scope. But then it cuts to Jack driving into this forest with a much more quiet and colorful atmosphere, proving that despite several wasted landscapes, there's still life in this world that needs saving. The silence is however broken by an explosion in the distance, with smoke emitting from the area, and Jack reluctantly ignores it to drink some water. It's shown in a way where Jack has truly lost a lot of his resolve, and has a deep broken spirit, summed up by the look on his face as he turns away from the smoke. He's not ignoring it out of reluctance to do his duty, but instead feeling trapped in a worn-out sense of honor and pride. As he's trying to drink water, he's haunted by tormenting hallucinations of his family and the people he believes he left to die, showing how harshly and how damaged his mind has become, traversing through this never-ending hell. It's also shown in a neat way where the falling leaves become the bodies of those he was forced to leave behind, which could be symbolizing how they fell into a river of despair in Jack's absence, and as they drowned in that water, they became horribly drained of their energy and health. Then we see how he's also haunted by this figure riding on horseback with a green glow and foggy mist surrounding him. It scares Jack into driving deeper into the forest to escape from these visions, but the scene with the fireplace shows that he can never escape these visions brought upon by his own guilt. These visions also play a part in reminding Jack to stay focused on his task and motivating him to journey to the sight of the smoke in the distance. These visions of his father consumed in the flames symbolize Jack's fear that he was unable to keep the promise made to his dad in the pilot, completely failing to defeat Aku and free their homeland. He doesn't want to believe that he was unable to keep his promise, and his dedication to retaining his father's respect shocks him into staying motivated in fighting Aku's assassins and minions. We then see the brutality of the training the seven daughters go through as their mother is seriously driven to raise them into becoming killers. There is this moment where one of the daughters gets a chance to see the outside world for the first time in her life, seeing the vast landscape after being trapped in these caverns all of her life. The mother takes time to explain how they are meant to protect that land from someone who wants to destroy it, but she also sees this as a sign of weakness, with her daughter allowing herself to be distracted and her guard to be left down. To ensure she stays focused, she orders her to be brutalized by her trainer. We'll focus on this particular one of the seven daughters later, but for now there's another implication to consider. It's very smart what they're doing here. The story is emitting sympathy for the seven daughters by showing exactly how they're being manipulated into thinking that Jack is the bad guy, and how they exist solely to kill him but are useless to Aku if they are weak. And it even emits sympathy for the mother who's ordering this brutal training for her children, as it's heavily implied that she herself was raised to believe the same thing. This never-ending cycle of Aku ruling over the earth has indoctrinated these people out of a chance to live a normal life. It brings up an ambiguous but still curious factor that I just thought of, as to whether any love for her children is true or even existing, but she's still bound to her loyalty to Aku, and thus is raising her children to share that same loyalty. Or if she really does just see them as mindless soldiers meant to serve her master. The children clearly express fear if they feel like they've displeased her, but still show respect towards her methods of training them into these powerful assassins. It's too early in the season to say for sure, but it's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Jack then arrives at the site of the smoke, seeing it as a destroyed village with the bodies still lying on the ground. Yeah, remember when I said how it was important for this new season to be on Adult Swim? It allows the writers to be more harsh and brutally honest about the misery Aku's reign is causing on the world. This is one of those examples where they don't make any attempt to sugarcoat how barbaric he and his minions can be. We then see Jack standing before the robot who destroyed the village, Scaramouche, who's actually voiced very well by Tom Kenny. He has this spunky way of talking and is a show-off who's very full of himself. But as a villain, he doesn't demonstrate these personality traits in an annoying way. He plays off of Jack very well, as Jack demonstrates a good contrast for this robot, not saying anything to him, but his facial expression still showing he's furious at this machine's actions killing innocent people, and finding himself annoyed with his ego. It's at this moment where the absence of Jack's sword is finally brought into question. Now, I had already figured out that Jack lost his sword in a fight against somebody, as the trailers and promos never show him using his sword, but there's a great mystery surrounding it as well, as it impacts the mood of the overall narrative. As you're seeing this, you're thinking a number of good questions. How did Jack lose his sword? Who was he fighting when he lost it? When did this happen and why? These questions raise a sense of interesting ambiguity for the time being, but it also raises a very important realization. The only means of killing Aku is missing. It raises the stakes to a level that's never been reached before, and it creates a new sense of tension. Jack no longer has the means of killing Aku himself, and in a way he's familiar with. As a matter of fact, the loss of the sword could be the main reason for Jack's fall into despair. The sword practically became an heirloom of his long-dead father, and it was also a staple to his character that he used the sword as a weapon of righteousness and triumph. Losing something that important to Jack would understandably damage him and send him down this path of feeling he's lost his honor. But it certainly doesn't stop him from interrupting the guy's phone call to Aku and beating his face, which I'm guessing is done to keep Aku's face hidden, though it's questionable as to why his face would be hidden. Many of us already know who he is, and if that shrine from earlier is any indication, it probably hasn't changed all that much. What follows is a pretty cool action scene between Jack and Scaramouche, as we see Scaramouche's ability to use magic through his music, bringing stone to life to transform it into a golem, and even using his own singing to telepathically control his sword. He also uses this dagger that acts as some kind of frequency sword shattering device, which renders Jack's blades useless. While Scaramouche isn't the most formidable henchman Jack has faced, he certainly provides an interesting challenge for Jack, a test to see what kind of enemies he can fend off against without the use of his magic sword, and relying on the inventory he's improvised for himself. Scaramouche is also shown to be fairly strategic, utilizing his own equipment to meet with each new approach Jack tries to use against him. The action here is very well paced, and we see how Jack makes use of all that he's still got, turning the plates on his armor into shields, turning his lance into a mace by attaching a chunk of the golem's stone onto the bladed edge, and even using Scaramouche's own technique against him. However, I will say that the way Scaramouche is actually slain is very stupid. See, Jack is using the guy's sword as the finishing weapon, so why doesn't Scaramouche just start singing to shake it out of his hands? There's nothing stopping him from singing since he's still able to enunciate with his lips, so he can just use more show tuning to take control of the sword and kill Jack. It's a brief moment of bad writing in what's otherwise a flawless season premiere. We do see that Jack is smart to take the scraps of the battle with him, such as the frequency sword, making you wonder how he'll use it to replace the weapons he lost, or how he'll use it in the next fight. And then we cut to the final scene where we see the 7 daughters completing their training by outright killing their coaches. Like, they seriously die as part of their learning process to become warriors. It really goes to show how dedicated these minions are to Aku, but there's one more thing I wanted to bring to the foreground, and that would be one of the 7 daughters who got the most focus amongst the group, Ashi. In the beginning, she's shown to be the most vulnerable and flawed, and her mother's harsh dedication to strengthening her had placed her in a situation where she needed to find her own resolve in order to survive, grow stronger alongside her sisters, and gain her mother's approval. Because she received the hardest discipline of the 7, she had to push herself the hardest, and thus became the most ruthless. She's even the first one to reach the top of the pillar where their training was completed. It's an extreme shift in personality and nature from that frail but well-minded child she was in the beginning. The way she looks out into the world beyond her cavern fills her with a sense of wonder. The happy expression on her face shows that she, at that point in time, was still a child and wanted to be able to enjoy the life she was given, but did not have the freedom to make her own choices because of her family's allegiance to Aku. It's the only moment in her life where she got to experience something other than the harshness and violence of her education for killing Jack, and that moment is so brief that it ends up being the most important part of her life and the most obscure. It may be possible that this brief moment will come into play later, as it's what her mother uses to lecture her about killing Jack, but I'm hoping that it's used properly instead of just being used for a cheap bit of emotional manipulation. However, considering the reputation and legacy of this show, I'm sure that I shouldn't be worrying too much about that. And the episode concludes with them donning the masks of Aku and heading out to find Jack and slay him, complete with that awesome rap vibe. Aside from all that other stuff, the episode has several other strengths. The most notable is the pacing. There was never a single scene that felt like it was underplayed or overcooked. Each event has the proper amount of screen time that it needs to get across the emotions that it needs to get across. It knows how to build up to more intense and suspenseful scenes in a way that doesn't feel like it's rushing itself to get to more exciting moments, maintaining its focus on the development of Jack's personal journey. The episode also builds a nice bit of anticipation for the rest of the season and how the series will end as a whole if this is the final season. It's clear that this season has big plans for Jack, although we can't be fully sure as to what those plans are. Jack's story arc in this season looks like it will be one of redemption, reclaiming his honor and restoring peace to the world, thus fulfilling his promise to his father after all those years. The animation quality itself looks fantastic. It truly feels like an evolved form of the animation from previous seasons, while still having a familiarity to its design and style of presentation. The music has a good beat to it as it fits well with the action scenes, the more subtle moments, and the creepier scenes in the episode. After all these years, I can safely say that Samurai Jack is making a comeback in all the right ways, and if this episode was this good, I can only imagine how much better the rest of the season can get from there. We'll just have to wait and find out. Thank you for watching my first review of Samurai Jack Season 5. If you liked what you saw, feel free to share this video on any site you like. If you're interested in future content, feel free to subscribe to this channel. And if you're already a regular fan of my content, I hope you enjoyed this new style, and will continue to enjoy my next videos. Have a nice day, and take care of yourselves. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.
Yeah.